I think the time shows it's 4:30. That clock doesn't tell you that, but it is 4:30. So we'll go ahead and get the meeting started, call the meeting to order. You have the minutes before you of the previous meeting. Are there any additions or corrections?
Oh, I have any. No, I think they were emailed. Oh yeah, Dennis has some.
Hearing none, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as emailed.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes as emailed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the proof of publication. Do you have a proof of publication, Sharon?
Just working on the clock.
Take just a minute for that to get passed around.
I saw it in the paper. $4.31.
4:32. Do I hear 3?
Your name's in here.
Okay, everyone having the chance, do I hear a motion to make the proof of publication of the affidavit of notification a matter of record?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we have before us a petition from Delco Packaging Corp. Requesting site plan review for 250 by 240, approximately 660,000 square feet, addition for storage at 2110 Patterson Street, Decatur, Indiana 46733, reference to City Code 150.235 for site plan review. So we'll let the applicant, as I think is Brett, make the comment.
Brett Miller, MLS Engineering. I also have Chris Elster with Briner Building with me and Greg Meyer with Dolco. So basically you can look at your screen, or I don't think you have any handouts per se, but I try to color code the screen to help follow me along here. So they're looking to add a 60,000 square foot warehouse facility on the west side of their existing building. There will be maybe a couple, 2 or 3 new employees with this addition, but mainly warehousing. So their current parking lots is adequate for their additional employees. The red lines are existing storm line, or proposed storm lines that we are picking up roof drainage downspouts and directing them into 2 new detention ponds that I have labeled their labeled pond and they're blue. They will be grassed and mowed. The blue color coding is just for your purposes. Let's see. Use that back up.
For some reason it's shutting off. You're calling them retention, Brett?
Yes.
I have a question. Since the cone ditch is running right there to the west of the building, why is a retention pond needed?
Well, city ordinance.
City ordinance?
Yeah, probably square footage of the roof.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a floodplain along there, so
Yeah.
that-
I noticed
the
that.
floodplain is kind of our limit for our ponds.
Okay.
Right now, there's no detention on site,
Yeah.
so our ponds that we're proposing are actually oversized to help accommodate some of the other sites too.
Very good.
So, in the long run, hopefully help the ditch
Sure.
by holding our water.
Did you lose it?
Shut down. That turns your recorder off too.
I don't think so. No, our recorder off is up here.
Yeah.
These are new connections. That should reboot.
It's good until it doesn't work.
And in addition to the hard surface of the actual construction, the 60,040 square feet, there's going to be concrete pad and asphalt in front of that between the building and Patterson Street, so the semis have access to that. So that's going to greatly increase the amount of hard surface for the runoff. They're going to lose all that absorption.
Right. And we're also doing a gravel fire lane around the building, which that'll show up here. So on the south side of the building, on the concrete, like Greg had mentioned, is going to be loading docks in that area.
It looks like, Brett, you can wing it.
I can wing it.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think we're fine. I think we got a glimpse of the overall, when it started out, so I think you're fine.
And then also with this project for fire protection, we're running a new water line that goes all the way around the building. We've been working with the city water department and utilities on the tap locations and that exact, so that's being, fine details worked out there, but for fire protection, a new water line loop in the building. For fire trucks, a new gravel access to the back side of the building, so a little stone turnaround for fire trucks. There will be a new entrance onto Patterson Street for the semi-traffic. Probably not in any of your packets, but on the screen, based on the conversation I had this afternoon with Greg and Kurt, we are showing, basically I'm proposing 2 shade trees and bushes along the parking lot for screening.
Let me go print them off.
You can, or I can pass this around.
Sure.
There's overhead power lines that's running along the rest of our property, so I wasn't proposing additional trees, and there's not a lot of room between the parking lot and the road with the power lines and stuff like that, so I thought it'd be best just do screening along the parking lot. And we're back.
There we go.
That's all right. So the orange color on the south side of the building, that's the asphalt and concrete pavement that I spoke about. Kind of the yellowish color on the north side is the fire truck turnaround. The blue line going around is the water line, and then kind of the green shape that I have along Patterson Street. 2 of them shows the shade trees and then bushes for screening of the parking lot there along Patterson in the parking lot.
So in that blue water main that circumnavigates the building. There'll be hydrants on that for fire department access.
Yeah, I can't remember, I think we're showing 6 to 7 new fire hydrants on that.
And then one of the other questions I had was about light plan and street lights, and you responded there were not going to be any additional pole lights.
No pole lights, there will be wall packs on the building for security purposes, so those just shine down the face of the building for the most part.
Okay, any further questions at this time from the commission members?
No, I...
Okay, if not, then we'll hear any comments from people in opposition. Seeing none? Anyone that's here to comment in favor? Seeing no one coming forward? Final questions from the commission members?
Are you requesting a preliminary or final, or what are you?
Final.
You'd like a final?
Do we have adequate information?
I don't know. That's
I'm
Kurt.
asking Kurt.
It's
I don't have anything on the building.
Exactly. So
And you haven't made a decision yet on firewood, which we just talked about. Right now, where the fire loop's coming up, Don, you have that page on there?
You can pay into the, it's different.
Yeah.
This is what we had proposed the fire loop to be, was go back out to Patterson Street. And then today we got some information that
Well, plan, see, that's the one where it's going right through the
parking lot.
parking lot. And they had came up with a contingency plan B to come over to the right of way and run it up. But something Donnie and I found out today, this is an 8-inch main out here. On Industrial Road, there's a 12-inch main that comes up and down there. It'd be a lot easier to run over to that
Just
12-inch
loop-
main
loop it.
than it would to come all the way back down to Patterson Street and tie into an 8-inch main.
right.
I guess, well, I guess, reverse, I guess, on a preliminary versus final. We understand that the building has to get back from the state before they can get the actual building permit from
Right.
you.
The building's going to be similar materials as the existing, and which is metal siding and a metal roof, and it will be approximately 18 inches taller than the existing building, so it would be 21 foot 6 inch eve height versus 20 foot is the existing facility as far as the building materials.
Where are we with the submittal to the state?
We haven't, we're in the process of working on those drawings, and we still have to get the owner's approval on the drawings as far as, so then it'd be submitted to the state upon their approval. And it has to go through corporate yet as far as the final decision, so can't speak exactly for when it'll be going to the state, but it will be going to the state, then we'd be getting that permit to the local, locals for permit.
Are they going to submit for an early foundation?
Yes.
Okay. Fire suppression, will that be submitted along with the rest of the building, or is that going to be on a separate?
That would follow shortly after the building's submitted. That's being has to meet the owner's insurance company requirements besides the state requirements. So that's generally being designed right now, but often those don't go through at the same time as the building. So it follows shortly after the building, more likely.
It's a question for Greg, but would you have any idea when corporate would make a decision on the final plans and
I don't have an answer for that. I know right now that it'll probably come in maybe March or April is what I'm guessing at this point. Because we've got a lot of projects in the works right today that we're consuming most of the people. So I think it's going to come maybe at the first of next year before we get the corporate sign off on it. It could come before that. As far as I don't know exactly.
When are you wanting to break ground?
We haven't put a time on it yet. We know we need the building, and we're just now staging it. We're owned by private equity. They don't like brick and mortar, so it really goes beyond our management group up to our private equity group. So that's kind of where it's at.
Well, one way that you could possibly do it, if you're not comfortable doing final site plan approval, you could just set a hearing date out, advertise it. If you're not ready to go, it can be continued, and then, once it's advertised, you can continue the meeting. It's just that you may have some additional per diems because you have more meetings involved. That's up to you.
Kurt, what's your desire? What would be your preference?
Well, I'd rather not having a building isn't as big a deal as not having the site plan fully dialed in. I would rather see the site plan completely dialed in with accurate location of the fire loop and everything that's going in. But
One comment on that, if I may, please, is part of the fire loop is crossing the railroad spur, the railroad spur supplying raw material to Dalco, and they don't communicate real quickly. And so I've been calling them every day for 4 days straight and haven't got word back from them. Trying to get their process identified for the work on crossing the railroad spur. And so this morning I was reading online different requirements just upon my own investigation on their website, and it was talking 6 to 8 weeks after design, and we know we're going to have to cross the spur in one fashion or the other, and I can't get through to those folks because they aren't communicating. And optimally, not trying to speak for the owner, but they're wanting to get it up as soon as possible, and that is dependent on getting the earthwork done. And we're losing weather because winter is coming on, of course. And so we're trying to keep moving forward, and if we can get corporate approval on the earthwork, we would love to be starting earthwork this fall. I'm saying mid-September to mid-October at the latest, in order to get the earthwork in, which would allow, because there's quite a bit of earthwork on the west end because of poor soil conditions, which would allow the building foundations to proceed as corporate approves that aspect in the building. So it's sort of a dual-fold issue here with weather closing in, and I'm not trying to speak for the railroad or the owner necessarily, but one way or the other, we have to cross the railroad spur to connect our loop, and they're not cooperating with communication. So as far as completing a fire loop with real specific data, that could be 3 months. Well, yes, I'm just throwing out 4 weeks of engineering and 6 to 8 weeks of railroad approval.
not nailed down, it's a fire loop, which that's right. Donnie's reviewed the detention counts and the drainage and,
Yeah, everybody,
but I think that's the only piece that's been somewhat
Donnie, you're good with everything else going on.
in motion a little bit.
Have you ever had any experience with the railroad doing something like this? That there's a chance they wouldn't
They
approve
don't
it?
move very fast.
I haven't, but what we've done mainly is just been new spurs, so they've been pretty well into work, but that
I try not
but
to
no
speak for them,
communication.
but I suppose their livelihood's dependent on Dalco shipping product, and if they can't get their
Yeah.
product, they're gonna be...
Well, if you just tell them that you're gonna start working a week and you assume that they've given their consent to what you're proposing, I'll bet you get a phone call.
I don't think as a board, I'm not speaking for the whole board, but I don't think we'd have any problem with giving preliminary and final with Kurt's involvement, as long as he is pleased with all the updates and all the information. I mean, I've got trust in Kurt to judge the project, so if what you want is to get going and get everything in motion, I would agree with that, but I don't know what... Well, I think...
Right. Well, I'm thinking of the fire department, since they're not here right now, I guess I'm in it, so, they're definitely gonna be interested in how the loop's gonna run.
Well, I don't, and I
They would
think...
rather have access to the 12-inch main and its
Yeah, oh,
supply than the 8.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I just don't want the railroad coming back here in a couple weeks, throwing a wrench in the mix.
Well, again, that'd be up, in my mind, that's the owner's gamble. I mean, it's his spur, and his schedule. That'd be up to the owner to decide if he wants to take that risk. Again, I'm just trying to help the owner keep moving forward as he wishes, and work with their decision schedule.
Do you cross the spur either way?
Yeah, there's no other way. You have to cross the...
So whether you come down to Patterson or whether you tie over?
That's correct. You can't complete the loop without crossing the...
Okay, that's what it looked like to me, and that was
Right.
my question I was just getting ready to ask. So,
The only third option would be is have a dead end. You wouldn't have a completed loop, but you would have a dead-ended fire line, which the chief isn't likely to
Well, nor your insurance company.
prefer. Right.
I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't want the loop and to run it. I mean, they'd love to have it run into the 12. I think we need to keep the ball rolling, to keep them so that they don't have to come back and say, can we do this, can we do that? I think that'd be not advantageous for them. So that's me.
so it comes down to the verbiage.
Yeah, yeah, if Tim can direct us in that,
Well-
that way.
Okay, I guess this is a question for Kurt then. Without the final design of the building or the loop, is there anything that would prevent or would alter the foundation? The building is pretty well known in terms of what you're going to do, so once, I mean, I guess you could give preliminary approval and authorize subject to whatever has to be submitted, a permit for construction of the foundation. If you're comfortable in going ahead and having final site plan approval, we could do that. Or you could hold that off until you're a little further along with regard to the loop and the actual design of the building.
Well, I think the only issue right now is the loop. Everything else, Don's good with the rest of the site plan. The loop's not gonna affect the foundation. I was hoping that we could pinpoint everything down, but the way it sounds, that's not gonna happen.
Okay. Well, then maybe what you do is you do a preliminary and final site plan approval with the condition that the loop has to be approved by city departments, whatever that design may be.
Prior to foundation.
Prior to construction of the building.
I'm good with that.
Define prior to construction, so they can start.
They can do the earthwork, they can do the foundation.
They can do the foundation. If they apply for an early foundation, it's gonna be grade level only. That's what the CDR will state.
Right.
So hopefully by then we can...
And that's pending state release.
That doesn't slow you down in terms of the dirt work and the foundation work. That gives you time to get the process approved by the corporation, as well as working with the railroad and hopefully getting the loop approved.
And potentially giving you some fall construction time in.
Right.
They can do the site work, they just can't do the foundation until we get the design release from the state. So if they file for an early foundation, then that's a different story. If the state releases it before the building. But based off of today, I mean, they can do the site work 95% of it.
Mhm.
It's just going to be that loop and
Didn't we do something similar with the storage facilities?
For Gilpin.
For Gilpin, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
We've made this kind of concession or movement on other projects in the past, and it's always worked out well.
Mhm.
Okay, so is anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion on what our council said. I don't think I want to go through.
All right.
Is that fair?
Sure.
Or I mean, in that direction, as
So
what
the-
our council said.
The motion is for preliminary and final site plan approval, subject to final approval of the fire line loop by city departments.
And state approval of foundation work.
State approval of necessary permits at the state level.
Right.
Okay, everyone get that motion?
I'll second that motion.
The motion's been made and second. Now, further discussion?
Can I ask a question? Is this where I can ask a question?
You go right ahead.
Kurt, on the fire loop design, would it be is it your intent to have the complete final approval by the railroad, or just a very clear path on the loop, whether it would go to Patterson or to Industrial Park Drive? I'm just trying to gauge with that 2 to 3 month design estimate how that may affect foundations. In my mind, I tend to be more conservative. I probably wouldn't pursue foundations until we were real comfortable with the railroad passing myself, but just trying to get some clarity out of your motion as far as no foundations until it's stamped, approved by the railroad, which could be 3 to 4 months, or if it's in the process of their approval.
well, as far as foundation, I need that from the state.
Yes,
I can't do anything until...
but I can get that real quick
Right.
without the loop,
Yeah,
is the
correct.
issue.
I think the loop basically would have to come back to corporate. I think the pressure has to come from your people. I would think. I would put the pressure on the railroad saying, hey, we ship so many of these containers out, can you step forward and help us out here a little? Get their attorney up there.
I need clarification on how that loop's gonna run. Whether you guys wanna roll the dice with the railroad, whatever, I need to know, I need to be able to let our fire department, our code enforcement, or the fire department know exactly how that loop's gonna run. So that they can take a look at it and make sure they don't have any issues.
Okay.
Because when we presented it to them, we hit them with, okay, here's the suggested, when here's plan B, and then ultimately this afternoon, we came up with plan C, which seems to be a better solution, but, you know, I've got 3 different scenarios here. I need to tell our fire department what's going on.
Good.
How does the loop affect the foundation? I'm confused because what you're talking about is, yeah, so how does that,
Well, it doesn't affect the foundation, but it affects decisions that your fire department wants to make in relationship to protecting
This
this.
is all final, so that loop is part of the final. So whether if you decide that we're gonna make this final today, then we need to put a stipulation in there based on loop design.
did Wes have a recommendation on which line to tie into? It sounded like the 12-inch.
He doesn't know anything about the 12-inch.
Okay.
That was plan C.
That was plan C. We just run across this afternoon.
Just learned it.
I guarantee he would prefer, I did talk to Tim Ballman, and Tim Ballman prefers C. He would rather have a 12-inch than the 8-inch.
Okay, so if you think the recommendation ultimately is going to be tie it into the 12-inch, can you just give site plan approval, final site plan approval, and say that's the condition, that's where it goes? If you run into a problem with the railroad, come back and we can revisit the site plan then.
That makes it more definitive.
Yeah. I mean, we're crossing the railroad.
Either way.
So they're not gonna, I'm not saying they're not gonna care which
I
direction.
think everybody prefers, so to speak, plan C. It's just that unless there's some engineering surprise, which we're unaware of today, because it's all just brand new information, that would change that.
I guess you make the final site plan approval condition upon it going to the 12-inch line. If you run into that kind of a situation, you'll need to come back and we can revisit it.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
So,
now we have a
undo your
motion on the
second.
floor. Do we
You
need
can
to
undo
take?
his
Yeah,
I think Donnie.
withdraw.
You need to withdraw your
Wait a minute.
second motion.
Don, did you have-
That can be resubmitted.
What I have up right now is the 12-inch water main. Maybe where their property line is, they may not even have to cross the railroad. Then I can bring that loop along the railroad. You're saying it can go right.
Where's that? Oh, I see what you're talking about. It could tie in to the north,
North of the railroad,
but that's the old railroad right-of-way. Who owns it?
well, they own a certain portion of it, that's a good question. They own the band.
Well, that's a loaded question, but if it's been abandoned, it depends on how the initial deed read. It could revert back to the prior owners, it could revert back to the existing owners, it could be deeded and dedicated either to the city or the state. That's part of the problem is when these were acquired 100 years or 150 years ago, they did it all kinds of ways. And it's made just a quagmire in terms of trying to untangle that.
But that wouldn't change the last proposal because it would still connect to the 12-inch main.
Yeah. Right. It's just a matter of you're not going under their spur, you're just going across potentially a right-of-way.
If that's a viable option and to not have to worry about the engineering for it, yeah, it still complies with our approval.
Right.
The loop would be an underground drilling anyway, wouldn't it?
They would bore part
I
of
would
it.
assume a directional bore would be done.
In my experience, the railroad's going to tell you the length of your casing pipe they want to get out of the right of way and what angle they want you to cross it. It's not
Right.
whether or not they let you cross it.
Right.
They're going to let them cross it because it benefits them. There's shelter spur.
Right.
It just might be a different angle, or they may tell you too, don't even bore the railroad to the north up and down the old right of way. I think you'll get the approval from the railroad, it just takes time, their permitting is slow.
Yep.
They want to know who your contractor is, if he's insured, and if he's licensed to bore the railroad or not. There's a whole bunch of hoops to jump through, more so on who's doing it than what you're doing.
Okay, will the seconder,
You need to withdraw the motion, or you need to withdraw the second?
I would do that.
Okay.
so
now
both
we
have
need-
withdrawn. Now we'll start out again with the motion. Go ahead, Bill.
No, well, great.
Okay,
Go
Greg?
ahead, you,
whichever one.
We'll go with preliminary and final site plan pending on approval of the loop connecting with the 12-inch out on Industrial Drive. Is that the...
Okay, second to that motion.
yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, motion been made and second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Start working with the railroad. Good luck.
That might be easier years ago.
Yeah.
I had to send them drawings on what we were doing.
Thank you for the patience.
Our drawing had to pull up to 8.5 by 11.
Thank you, and it's good to see moving forward with the
36 drawings.
additional space and so forth,
Make sure
the need
that
for it.
Folds up to it. I mean, it was,
Okay, old business.
took a long
Anyone have any old business we need to discuss?
I have something under new
I do
business.
too. Well, you probably have the same thing.
Yeah.
That's all.
Kurt,
Kurt, do you have any
the
old
old
business?
business?
Okay, new business, I see the homestead setback requirements.
Yes, new business, homestead setback requirements. For some reason, homestead is the only subdivision in city limits that has a 30-foot setback requirement to the property line, from the rear property line. Everywhere else in town is 10 feet if you want to put a outbuilding. We've notified everybody along High Street, everybody in Homestead of our intent to change that setback from 30 feet to 10 feet.
Okay, before you do that, Homestead was a federal government program where the reason for the setbacks was so people could plant gardens. Okay? So you need to check the original documentation when that was platted to make sure that that's not a permanent restriction. Because if it is, you don't have the ability to change it, because that was a federal program.
That's interesting, a garden idea.
And Jack just pointed out to raise chickens, and within the city limits,
That's right.
our ordinance declares that you can't have farm animals within the...
But the homestead was to be designed as self-supporting out there.
Interesting.
I have to abstain because I live out there, but I guess I just have a question for you, Tim.
Yeah.
If you look down the backside of Adams Street, there's probably 20
Probably
that
having
are
there.
on the property line on the back. What, do you just have to get a variance? Or do they
Well-
even get variances, or just kind of got...
Well, if it's you're talking about a shed, if it's a shed, it's not a permanent structure.
There's permanent structures also.
If it's a permanent structure, then it may be in
It
violation of
has a
that.
foundation, it's a permanent structure.
Right.
And there's two types of sheds. There's the portable ones, and then there's the ones that they
I'm
build
saying there's
pole barn style, or they'll
2 foot
actually
off the
pour
line.
concrete in the slab.
Um,
Those are permanent.
Let's first see if there's something that can't be changed, and then we'll go from there. If it's something that's pre-existing, it would get grandfathered in probably. If there's no restriction on changing the setback to something that's more uniform throughout the city, then if there's a violation, it generally, when you make a change, you just grandfather in any non-conforming use. And simply what that means then is, if at a time later they're going to tear down and replace it, or they're going to do significant renovations to it or something like that, then they may have to move it to be in compliance with the setback requirement.
Okay, so that issue is to be looked into yet. We have an issue with permit fees and deciding someone, Mr. Coos from Cottonwood had asked, paid permit fees and now is requesting them back. We have no legislation, we have no code or anything that tells what to do with that, whether we pay it back, pay partial back, whatever. Do we have any input from other areas? Have we?
No, I haven't talked to anybody on that yet. I wanted to bring it in here first, collect your thoughts. Because this is something I'm being told we've never run across before.
Well, I think the simplest way of doing this is if we would have anything to do with the withdrawal, then maybe we're obligated to pay it back, but if we didn't request to have it withdrawn, I think, and they requested it, I think it's their loss.
Well, in thinking about this for a bit, I think most people assume the fee has to do with what happens here on Tuesday afternoons at 4:30, when the reality is the majority of the administrative time is in the building department well before the meeting. So the simple fact that we haven't met does not really directly relate to the amount of time the city has invested in it.
Well, and we would, any publishing that we have done in the building department, we would deduct from that fee. So anything we paid out in order to notify the public, publish in the paper, those fees would come out of that.
Well, direct cost is very understandable, but there's a lot of indirect costs too.
Right.
Because there's time and resources of the city staff that has been devoted to these things.
Yeah, and the issue is complicated a little bit because in Mr. Cost's case, it's not a matter before the Plan Commission, it's a matter before the BZA. He was seeking to have 6 trailers converted to storage facilities. He was charged $300 per trailer because each is a separate structure. So he's paid $1,800, and so at that point, he's saying, hey, can I get some of that back? And there's nothing in our ordinance that authorizes a refund or what the conditions are for a refund to be given. So what I shared with the mayor and Kurt is ultimately it probably should be something in our ordinance, and that requires the council to take action. So does the Plan Commission and the BZA have a recommendation to council for council to consider when we get to the point of amending the ordinance? And I think that's the issue.
Any comment on what you'd like to recommend?
I just don't know if you want to open up the box of returning payments. I mean, it's just my opinion.
If I can comment from back there, I didn't know what you're talking about, I just walked back in. But, yeah, he paid $1,800. I have 2 thoughts. One, we don't give him anything back. 2, if we do give it back, it has to go towards utility bill if we can do such a thing.
That's 2 different ledger accounts.
Yeah.
You can't take from Peter and pay Paul.
But I don't know if I should say this, but in this situation, we have more than $1,800 wrapped up.
If we give it back to him...
What's that?
I mean, in this situation, we've had more than $1,800 wrapped up in BZA before. I mean, granted, it may not be the same occasion, but I don't know if we need to open up the box and start giving them back. maybe we need to address an ordinance, but on this case,
My
my opinion is no.
Well, I guess what I would recommend is that we just put something simple in the ordinance that says any application fees are non-refundable.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Unless
that's the
the
easiest
city-
way, instead of going in different directions and what ifs then, and why is this case different than the others?
And in the meantime, with the BZA is going to have to make a recommendation on Costa's case specifically, but then a second, whether they want that language in the ordinance. That would be up to the council to determine whether any refund should be made, because it's a financial matter. And at that point, then, council would have to take action to change the ordinance to put a provision in there that addresses whether any kind of a refund would ever be given, and if so, under what circumstances.
If they don't give that money back to him, could you see him going to Justin Law and him trying something legal? I just know how goofy the guy's been.
Man, I'm not going to say that won't happen.
$1,800 isn't going to go very far with billable time.
Guy doesn't seem to care about that, does he, Tim?
Yeah, I don't...
I think what you're talking about is more of a marketing decision on the city's part, what's going to look good versus what the business economics of it is. I mean, the city has already expended resources. Permitting fees do not cover all of the services that the city delivers. In this instance, should the city choose to refund the money, it's to make somebody look good or to avoid a potential problem. That's my opinion as a business owner. We term that as customer satisfaction. Sometimes it's easier to make a problem go away. So in this instance, the city's already expended the resources far in excess of that $1,800.
Does he know that? Or understand that?
No, you couldn't
That's
get him
a
to
whole nother
understand.
conversation.
All he knows is he
Yep.
forked over $1,800 for 6 trailers that are now in rubble
Yeah.
because of the situations, and there's pictures. That's what they look like now.
You don't get a refund.
Yeah, those are choices that this gentleman has made from a business standpoint. I wish every business decision was a guaranteed payback. It don't work that way.
Does it?
No!
So am I hearing, if I had consensus that...
Do nothing.
We do nothing, or, well, add the recommend to the council that they add a sentence saying that fees are not refunded?
Does that create an issue with this situation already, or?
Well, he's already paid it, so he's asking for a refund. So I think what ultimately, if the BZA makes a recommendation to council that they feel either that there should be a refund or that there shouldn't, and that there should be some language added to the ordinance, then council ultimately has the final say.
So what do we need from the planning commission?
Planning commission, I think you can just pass a motion saying your recommendation is whatever. Either you don't allow a refund and you recommend that council add language in our ordinance that specifically states that, or if you think a refund under certain circumstances should be allowed, then you need to kind of give a recommendation to council of what those conditions might be.
On a tangent,
And that could
did
get
we make
difficult.
refunds or consider refunds to North Adams Schools and or Woodcrest Adams Memorial Hospital when they were asking for refunds?
We reduced the fees that were charged for the
Had they
permits.
already paid them and money was returned?
The hospital, yes,
But yeah, Woodcrest, yes.
but those were building permit
Those are
fees
building permits. These are application fees we're talking
for
about.
variances or, you know, for, in your
So
case,
there's
for...
a precedent that money has been returned to developers.
On
In that
permits,
sense.
though, but it's two different
But we're talking about two different kinds of
payments.
places, yeah, permits and fees.
Permits and application fees.
Mhm.
two different things.
The billing permit fees for construction, the application fees for administration, and code enforcement. Maybe you could inform the board how much the city spent defending the city with Mr. Chairman versus
Yeah.
Mr. Cost.
We spent a lot of money if you're going to bring in the hearing that we had.
Right.
But does that pertain to this? That's kind of like what Greg just said. That's another whole issue.
Yeah.
Then what we've spent for this particular application would be the mailings that you've sent out to neighboring properties.
Publications in the property.
Those are direct costs.
Yeah. Direct costs we pay.
That's good. I mean, there's a lot of hours.
Insurance time.
Can't see
if he funded that really, as much as he's put through everybody through it. He paid our ministry and got involved. Called, he said he's a piece of
I'll make a motion not to refund the payments.
And put something in our
And move forward with council.
Correct.
Yeah, well, you can either do one at a time, or you can address both. One is,
Because otherwise it's going to look like
do one at a time. So you're saying no refund?
Yeah.
Or your recommendation is there'd be no refund?
On this project.
Well, it's not really a matter for the Plan Commission to address for the refund Mr. Cost is asking, because it's not before you, it's before the BZA. But what you're saying is, as a policy, you're making a recommendation that any application fees filed for something to come before the Plan Commission, if there's a subsequent request to withdraw the application and request a refund, you're saying it's non-refundable. If I understand what Tyler's saying.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then is there a second recommendation that you put language in the ordinance to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. To put it in the ordinance, all in favor, further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, when's the next BZA hearing?
We don't have anything scheduled.
Okay. Well, at the next BZA hearing, this is something that needs to come up and be addressed. So, I don't know if, unless you want us to call a special meeting just for that issue.
It goes $250.
I understand, I'm just saying, that's the choice.
Yeah, the hole's just getting deeper.
Okay, anything else to be brought before the commission? Hearing and seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You are adjourned.